कुंभे पुनर्वसु जातो केरले चोळपट्टने कौस्तुभांशं धराधीशं कुलशेखरमाश्रये कुष्यते यस्य नगरे रङ्गयात्रा दिने दिने तमहं शिरसा वन्दे राजानं कुलशेखरम् 13 and 14 भवजलधिमगाधं दुस्तरं निस्तरेयं कथम् अहमिति चेतो मास्मगाः कातरत्वं सरसिजदृशि देवे तारकी भक्तिरेका नरकभिधि निषण्णा तारयिष्यत्यवश्यम् तृष्णातो ये मदन पवनोद्धूत मोहोर्मिमाले दारावर्ते तनय सहज ग्राह संघाकुले च संसाराख्ये महति जलधौ मज्जतां नस्त्रिधामन् पादां भोजे वरद भवतो भक्तिनाभं प्रयच्छ. The earlier, as I said, these verses are not like shlokas which you chant and remember necessarily. These are shlokas that you verses that you recite and understand. And you can keep some lines and some verses or some lines in your memory because it helps to remind ourselves. A lot of times, verses help us to remind things that an English phrase may not help us so much. Because these verses, the shlokas are packed in a way that when you think of the shloka, then you think of the meaning. The of course, you can think of English words and English sentences will come to your mind and you'll still get the meaning. But the beauty about shlokas are they are arranged in a certain way that gives a certain beauty to. It's like thinking of poetry versus prose, right? And these shlokas are pretty much written like poetry. And so you keep this in your mind, and then some of those ideas will come to our rescue when we need them. Just give me one moment. Got this fan, it's shaking the laptop a bit. Okay. I was wondering why the laptop shaking. Then I saw the fan is kept here and the laptop is shaking slightly. So these verses are built in a way that when we think about them directly, we try to get to the meaning of it. And one of the reasons we are repeating it so many times is we get familiar with these words. And many of these words we would have heard them. Many of the Sanskrit words we wouldn't have heard. Many of them. So it's also a nice way to get introduced to some of the new words that Kulasekara Alvar is introducing us to. And we, by repeatedly saying this, we get direct access to the meaning. We don't have to later look at the word meaning. And which is one of the reasons why, if you notice, we've also given on the English side, the transliterated side, it's broken. Wherever possible, it's broken down so that the sandhi is broken for us to be able to access the word easily. So 13th one, again, he is traveling down the same line as before in terms of saying how devotion is going to guide our path. In fact, in the next two verses, this is 13 and 14, he talks about how devotion is the method. Bhakti navam prayachha. He talks about bhakti as a navam. In the previous one, we spoke about Vishnu Poto. Vishnu himself is the boat. But here he is talking about bhakti as the boat. Now, devotion in it is a very very frequently used term when it comes to worship, prayers, and any form of and it's also used freely in terms of when you're saying you're devoted to somebody. The wife is devoted to the husband, right? The servant, the dasa, is devoted to the master. So their devotion is essentially, there are two kinds of devotion that happens when you say devoted. A human being is devoted to another human being. It happens out of two states of condition within you. One is that you don't know what else to do, hence you're devoted. Right? So you're devoted, for example, the servant is devoted to the master because he gets his livelihood from the master. Right? The master pays him, takes care of him, so he gets his livelihood and he's taken care of, so he remains devoted to the master. So devoted means, in that case, whatever the master is asking for, he'll do. And there the transactional, and if a particular if a couple of months or a few months of the master is not able to pay or take care of the family of the servant or the dasa, then he will have to look out for some other alternatives, right? He can't remain devoted to the same master because now his source of income, his livelihood is now at stake. So you look at the nature of transaction there. That is one. The second kind of devotion is within relationships. When we say the wife is devoted to the husband. In many cases, particularly not if you don't look at the current circumstances, but if you look at circumstances of our ancestors, our grandmothers and great grandmothers, and so on and so forth, they remain devoted to the husband because of the social structure. Not always because they want to. They don't, not many of them remain devoted because of choice. They remain devoted because of the social structure. And again, there the husband provides, the husband gives a safe environment, and hence you remain devoted to the husband. Because if you don't, if you're not devoted to the husband, then your safety, your social situation, your social status, everything will be at stake. So even if the wife would go or rebel against the husband, won't go beyond a certain distance, right? It won't, I'm fundamentally in disagreement with whatever you're doing, and I'm going to completely cut off my relationship with you. So that kind of a thing wouldn't happen because of this necessity. Today, that devotion is not there in many places in relationships, is because a lot of us have become independent. Because of independence, that kind of devotion is not there anymore, which means which is enforced due to your need. That is not there anymore because of this independence. So understand this, devotion stems from dependence. To some extent, the husband remains devoted to the wife. Same social condition. He needs somebody to take care of the family while he goes and works and earns. He needs somebody to take care of his mother, his father, his children, his house. So as long as she is doing all that, the husband remains devoted to the wife. So to some extent, this dependence is beautiful, because that kind of devotion is also required to run a reasonably harmonious setting. But the moment each one becomes independent, see, even the son will listen to the father till the son becomes independent. Right? I've seen small boys, when they are very young, they'll go wherever the father goes, they'll do whatever the father says, they'll do all that. Because mentally, also, one, he looks up to the father as this role model, and also knows that there's a great deal of dependence on the father for what he needs. So there's a certain amount of allegiance. The Senapati remains devoted to the king. So there's a certain allegiance that is there, because there is a transaction. So here, similarly, there is a certain level of transaction when we talk about devotion to the Lord. There is a certain transaction, because we think that if I remain devoted to Bhagavan, he will take care of all my needs. That is a good way to start. That's a good way to start, to say that I will remain, I'll do Kainkaryam, I'll do puja, I'll do everything, because in my head I know he's taking care of me. Or I have developed through my parents teaching, my society teaching me, through the satsanga I go to, I've learned that Bhagavan is taking care of me. Hence, I remain devoted to Bhagavan, and I will do what, who's to tell what to do? In all other relationships, the master is telling the, or the, the or the devotee, the one who's devoted, gets instructions, clear instructions from the master what needs to be done. Be it the husband-wife relationship, the father-son, or the mother-daughter, or the master and the servant, employer-employee, there is clear instruction coming. Now here, who is to give that instruction? Where is this Bhagavan that we have been taught about sitting there to give us instructions? And how do you know you are doing his bidding? How do we know we are doing what Bhagavan is asking us to do? There's no way of us knowing. Then elders or seniors or Mahangal will point us to Shastras. They will say, the Shastras are the words of Bhagavan. You should listen to it. So whatever has been said in the Shastras or the Vedas or the Upanishads or the various literature scriptures that are there are the words of Bhagavan, and hence we must listen to it. But then again, we have another problem. Who is to interpret what is written there? Who is to interpret it appropriately? Whether the punctuations are correct, where if the meaning of the word of the word has been written in the right way, has it been communicated? Even if we write something and give it to somebody to go follow the instruction, there are so many misinterpretations that can happen, right? So how do we interpret this? So now this is an issue. The problem is we use this word devotion freely without really understanding what is this relationship that we are in when we are talking about being in devotion or being devoted. So then what happens is we listen to various people. He said something, oh, okay, so I should say that or do that. He said something, so I should do that. He looked at the Bhagavad Gita and interpreted, so I should listen to that. He said something from the Vedas or the Upanishads or some scriptural works, then I should listen to that. Because we are now at the mercy of so many people to interpret it for us. Why? Because we have been told that those words are the words of Bhagavan and the instructions are there. So if you want to remain devoted to Bhagavan, you must know his instructions, and hence you have to listen to all of this and follow all this. See, just notice it's quite complicated, right? And we don't know what to listen to. We don't know which one to pick up, which one to do. And this is where we move from this uh, move away from this ignorance, ignorance of dependence. Because a lot of times dependence causes a certain level of ignorance within us. As long as the instructions that you get are very clear, you can remain ignorant. As long as you know the instructions, you're getting the instructions, you can remain ignorant about everything else. But if you don't, you can't remain ignorant. You have to figure out how to get those instructions. We have to apply some method, some technique. Right? So, now when you look at how am I going to remain devoted to Bhagavan, and what do I listen to, what do I follow to be able to be devoted to Bhagavan, we are going through rounds and rounds and rounds of looking at different kinds of works, different kinds of scriptures, different kinds of interpretations, different kinds of meanings. And we eventually form our understanding of the whole thing. We have to get to this place within ourselves to say that, okay, now I have a reasonable understanding of what I am doing, what needs to be done, so that I remain in devotion. And which is why I always differentiate the word between doing devotional acts and being in devotion. Devotional acts can only take you so far. Devotional acts are what? You do puja, you do Shodasha Upachara, you do the worshipping, the chanting, all of that you do. Those are acts of devotion, which means you are in a way swearing your allegiance to Bhagavan. You're telling that, Bhagavan, I am your dasa, I am your servant, you are my master. This is what you constantly reminding him and reminding yourself also. But of being in devotion is whether you do this or not, somewhere inside you, you figured out to know to listen to your inner voice. You have come to a state within you where you have now become very, very receptive and perceptive about being able to listen to that voice of instruction from inside you. And how does this happen? This happens through these acts of devotion. The acts of devotion are methods, but that is not the end. Those are only means to get you to a state of being in devotion. And when you are in devotion, you are not transacting with Bhagavan. As long as you are just doing acts of devotion, like the servant is doing for the master, somebody is doing, the wife is doing for the husband, you're always waiting for an instruction. In acts of devotion, you wait for an instruction. Where will it come from? That is why we run from an astrologer to this guru, to that Swamiji, to this one, that one. We keep running because we're looking for somebody to instruct us. Na enna pannum neenga sollungo. You tell me what I need to do. And then maybe that person will tell you with all great intention and blessings. We will do that for a little while, but we have gone there for a particular outcome. We are looking for an outcome, and that outcome will not be achieved. And then we'll go to another person saying that, I tried this out, but now you tell me. To another person. Because we are going with an required outcome to these individuals who we think will interpret Bhagavan's words for us and make those as instructions. Do 1, 2, 3, 4. My point is, do whatever you want to do. Yoga rato va, bhoga rato va. Doesn't matter what you do. This is what Shankara is also telling. Doesn't matter. But as long as your intention is clear, do whatever you want to do. Your intention should be what I want to be in devotion, means I want to think of Bhagavan. I want to be in this state where I'm always thinking about Bhagavan, where I'm not transacting with him, but I am communicating with him. There's a difference between communication and transaction. Two friends can be sitting and just talking to each other nicely, and they're having a good time without actually transacting. Why do we want to get into this master slave kind of a relationship? Yes, Bhagavan tells me, like Nandi, Bhagavan tells Nandi he is always there to do what his master is saying. But then that comes from a very different place where Nandi knows and he is listening intently and he knows how to listen to that voice. We don't. So why wait for instructions? And then we'll say, oh, that day, I was walking, I went into the shop, suddenly this mommy came and said this to me. Bhagavan sonna madri irundhathu. All of that we will take. It's nice if we take everything like that, that happens. Right? We shouldn't become too overly concerned that mommy said, oh, then I went that day morning, I saw this, suddenly this black cat crossed my road and oh my God, that day. So we associate ourselves to all of these. I think the network stalled for a moment. Able to hear me? Ah. So, moving from acts of devotion to being in devotion helps you journey through this, and which is a very, very important thing to note. And I've read this somewhere. It says devotion is that boat that can take you across even if you do not know the way. Vadi theriyalana kuda, I don't need to know the path, the route, but I am doing acts of devotion. Whatever I know I am doing, I do it with my complete, the full bhava or the full emotion from within me. I'm doing it. It will take us, even if I don't know the way. I don't know how many breathing techniques I have to do. I don't know what kind of yoga I have to do. I don't know what are all the different kinds of bijaksharas I should chant. What is the sequence of shlokas I need to do? I have no idea. But still, if I bring this intention in me, Bhagavan, I know you are the one. I have come to this point in my life where I understand enough that there's this creator that's running this whole thing. How much ever I splash in the waters I'm sitting in, I know there is somebody who's created this pool for me, who's brought this water for me and put me into this water, and I'm splashing. And I don't want transactional relationship with him. This is very, very, very important. We must recognize. I don't want transactional with him. Let him do what he does for me because I know he'll do the best. My duty is to engage or create a communication with him. How do you create a communication? But thinking about, which is why Bhagavatam is read many times. Why? They say the Leelas of Bhagavan. You keep reading, so that when we listen or when we don't, this is what happened to Kulasekara Alvar. He kept listening to Ramayana, he kept listening to Bhagavatam, he kept listening to Krishna stories, and then he thought really there is Rama's war is happening, and then he sent all his Sena. We have to, within ourselves, bring this thought again and again and again, in whatever condition you are in. Not go to Him when you are in need. This is the meaning of being in devotion. Not to run to Bhagavan when you are in need. And other times I'm just going to relax. Why? Being in the movie hall, can you just for a moment close your eyes? Movie is happening, some boring song is happening, or some scene is not interesting. Can you close your eyes there and do a small chant, or think about Bhagavan, or think about how beautiful life is, how you've been blessed by so many things? Is it possible to do that? That is what we should do. Even if you go to the movie hall, and even if you're sitting there, and even if you're going into work, even at some place, doesn't matter. Because this is an inner communication. It is not that, okay, morning I did my puja, throughout the day I'm going to do all the nonsense I do, then evening suddenly I'll come down and sit my puja and go into very deep dhyana. Those are beautiful things. I'm not saying those are not important. Those are important. But what is also important is doing the rest. Because otherwise, what will happen is the mind will tell you, you are doing in the morning and evening, you're doing for so many days and so many months and years, nothing seems to be changing. Correct. Kalpaka has written Kabir Doha. You know the full thing, ma? Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi.
सुख में करे न कोई, जो सुख में सुमिरन करे तो दुख काहे को होए।
दुख काहे को होए. जो सुख में सुमिरन करे, dukh kahe ko hoy. Which means all of us think about Bhagavan. Dukh mein sumiran ko kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Nobody does it when they are happy and joyful. But when you do it when you're happy and joyful, then dukh will not even come. So beautiful, right? Thank you, Kalpaka. This is important. When I'm the most joyful, that is the time I should do most of this. I'm feeling so good today. I'm feeling so good. Let me sit and do dhyana, japa. Let me read some beautiful books, spiritual books, things that are going to elevate my mind. Let me do loudly chanting now. Let me go to the temple when I can. Let me do yatras when I'm able to. This is important. So, in the same thing, Kulasekara Alvar is saying this: Bhava jaladhimagadham dustaram nistareyam katham ahamiti cheto masmagah kataratvam. In this Bhava Jaladhim, this whole ocean of samsara, fathomless, agadham, it is so deep, it is impossible to cross. Dustaram, dustaram. To tara, it is duhu, it is very difficult. But nistareyam, somehow I'll cross beyond this. How? I will cross beyond this through bhakti. Says, Sarasija drishi deve taraki bhakti reka. Narakabhidi nishanna tarayishyatya. So who will save you? Devotion will save you. Whose devotion? Devotion to Narakasura's killer. Narakabhidi nishanna. So to that one, if you are devoted, he will take you across. But the important thing we have to also remember, it is not the same kind of devotion that we have in all the other forms of relationship, which is why we discussed a little bit about being devoted. It is not the same. It should not be the same. Because we don't know what is Bhagavan is telling. We can't wait for instructions. We can't. If you look, this is the same problem. Jiddu Krishnamurti, those who have heard of Jiddu Krishnamurti, he would say that We've run enough behind waiting for gurus to come and tell us what to do. Of course, he goes to a certain extreme. Same thing Buddha did many, many centuries ago. And there have been people who have taken the tools that they have and owned it. I am not saying you should not have a guru, you should not get teachings or teachers or whatever. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the tools that we have, we put them to use, we own it. It's not about evaluating the tool, it is about your firm intention of where you want to be. If you want to be in this perennial conversation with Bhagavan, that should be the intention. And then this will take you there. All your acts, your tools, your methods, your techniques will take you there. When you're sitting by a lake or sitting in a park silently, when you're watching, your mind should be in communication, not in complaint. Understand this. Communication is also doesn't mean that you're complaining always. என்ன பகவானே என்ன இப்படி ஆயிட்டு இருக்கு என்னது நானும் உனக்காக இப்படி பண்றேன் இவ்வளவு ஆயிட்டு இருக்கு இதா இருக்கு அவ அப்படி பண்றா இவ அப்படி பண்றா this is happening that is happening why like this why to me only. That is not communication, that is complaining. We are not talking about complaining. The quality of communication should be that Bhagavan should feel proud of you. வாப்பா அப்படின்னு ஐயோ வந்துட்டானே அப்படின்னு. பகவான் shouldn't be there. ஐயோ பார்க்குக்கு வந்துட்டானே நான் காலி இப்போ. Now he is going to communicate with me. That is not communication. Communication is it's a way of it's a way of exploring and expressing everything, not complaining. So look at, oh, how beautiful this tree is. Oh, how beautiful the sky is today. It's such wonderful. I know the weather is awful, but yeah, there are people who are even more difficult conditions. Whatever. It's a conversation that you have nicely, a gentle, nice, beautiful conversation, which leaves you feeling joyful at the end of it. Right? So he says, Naraka bhidi nishanna tariyishyatya vashyam. He will definitely, devotion will definitely take you across. Devotion to who? Devotion to Bhagavan. Then Trishna toye madana pavanodhuta mohormimale Daravarte tanaya sahaja graha sangha kulecha samsarakhe mahadi jaladhau majjatam nastridhaman padam bhoje varada bhavato bhakti navam prayacha. Since I am caught up in this samsara, he calls Dara Varte, or the Dara is like whirlpool, and the sons and other relatives are like sharks, hordes of sharks that come and that hold me in this samsara, and I am drowning. Can you please, Tridhaman, the one who is the Lord of the three worlds, Tridhaman, Padam Bhoje Varada Bhavate Bhavato Bhakti Navam Prayacha. Can you send us the boat of devotion? Send me the boat of devotion through which I can cross through this. Because even as I'm crossing, as I said, devotion is that method or that boat that even if you don't know the way, it's a vehicle that will take you across. It will take us across. Even if there are sharks. So here the metaphorical sharks he's used are the family, relatives, people around him, because he also had difficulties with his relatives, etc., who Kulashekhara Alvar. So he's saying all of these people are just like vultures, like sharks around me, wanting to take from me something they want all the time, some transaction that they want. My sons, my wives, my children, my relatives, my brothers. So all of these people are constantly wanting to take something from me. Bhagavan, give me this boat that can help me. Even though the sharks are there, this boat will take me through safely. Bhakti navam prayacha. Bhakti reka. Eka. So bhakti reka, bhakti navam prayacha in this one, the 14th one. And the 13th one he says, Bhakti re, Taraki Bhakti reka. Here Tara Devi is that boat of devotion. Okay. So we move our minds from focusing on the acts to the intention. And the intention should be this. This is the eventual intention that doesn't matter, whatever condition, state, situation I am. I should find joy in just thinking about you. I should find just joy in thinking about you. He said this similar one in a previous verse where he said, Divi va bhuvi va mamastu vaso narake va narakantaka prakamam. Nastha dharme navasuni chaye. I am not doing this for any particular reason. The only reason is I find joy in thinking about you. I find joy in being in your thoughts, being constantly. But we should be careful. நம்ம கல்பகா சொல்ற மாதிரி we shouldn't become like தர்மி. திருவிளையாடல்ல தர்மி வந்து தானே புலம்புவான்ல. That Nagesh character. It shouldn't become that we are like constantly talking to ourselves that way. It's not about understand this, please. Communication is different from talking to ourselves or complaining. It's not that. Communication is you're sitting quietly, you're having a gentle, you don't need even words for that. You don't need words for communication. It may just be thoughts. Doesn't have to be words. It could just be thoughts. Having thoughts of Krishna, thoughts of Devi, thoughts thoughts of what that principle is, what that idea is, what the concept is, what different things that have happened. Wireless communication, correct. Bluetooth.
கம்மின்னு கேட்டு வாங்குற கம்யூனிகேஷன் இருக்கக்கூடாது.
என்ன மாமா?
கம்மின்னு கேட்டு வாங்குற கம்யூனிகேஷன் இருக்கக்கூடாது. கம்யூனிகேஷன் கம்மின்னு கேட்டு வாங்குற
ஐயோ வா. சூப்பர். கம்மின்னு கேட்டு வாங்குற கம்யூனிகேஷன். Super. True. And that communication should be, at the end of the day, it should leave us in a state of joy and some kind of fulfillment. So that it should not lead us to, we should feel that, okay, when do I get this next opportunity? When I'm free from everything, I want to sit down again. I want to have this chit chat, right? Like I said, it's a friend that you have with whom you're not transacting. You're not looking forward to getting something from that friend or wanting something, nothing. And it's not like a shoulder to cry upon. No, none of that also. யாருமே இல்லை சொல்றதுக்கு, நீங்களாவது இருக்கீங்களே, அதெல்லாம் கிடையாது. This is, I'm saying this is progressively you have to get there. The important thing is we use devotion as a tool to get from acts of devotion, we get to being in devotion. I keep repeating this, right? Being in devotion is not necessary. You may not do any act, but you are in devotion. Slowly it will generate that intuition in you. You know what you need to do. Which is why people a lot of times they will ask, what am I to do? What am I to do? these questions will not come, because somewhere you will know what you need to do. What you need to do will be known to you. All the other things, your life will be taken care if we set this intention and go in this direction. Everything else that we today we think that I can ask and get and fix, all of those things will also get taken care of. Right? We'll close with this. See, Kulasekara Alvar was a king who ruled, but slowly, the kingdom went away from him. Somebody took it, and it happened in the most beautiful way. It didn't happen that somebody overnight, the brother came, killed him, and snatched away the kingdom, and nothing like that. He was so much in his own joy that the kingdom slowly receded away from him, and he was in complete, the whatever needed to be settled got settled. It doesn't mean that we have to keep going around like that, right? Oh, I don't do my things and I keep going around like that, and somehow, no, not like that. We do what we're doing, but don't keep hankering for somebody, something to come and fix these things. No, do what you're doing and try to be in the state of devotion. Whatever needs to be settled will get settled, and you'll know what you need to do. Okay. That is the beauty, because it says devotion will take you across even if you don't know the path, right? Something very important to remember. I heard this somewhere, but it's a very beautiful statement. Om Kayena Vacha Manasendriyerva Buddhyatmana va Prakrite Swabhavat Karomi Yatyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanaayeti Samarpayami Sadashivayeti Samarpayami Jagadambiketi Samarpayami Sadgurunathayeti Samarpayami Hari Om Tat Sadgurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.